Hey, big wide world. It's Ian here from Outsource Marketing and the Marketing Guides, and I'm joined by Tucker, sorry, and Paul Barthel from Chainscape Web. And today we also have Jeff Steck from Tylerica Marketing Systems. Did I pronounce that right this time, Jeff?
Tylerica, yeah. So you're a little tongue-tied today, Ian. We're gonna have to
This should be an interesting. This should be a good podcast.
Yeah, we're off to a great start.
Well, for our listeners, in this episode, we're going to talk about trade shows. They are back and they seem to be in full swing following their COVID stoppage. Trade shows have been very important in the past. And I think that still continues, but we'll start off our conversation with that. But today we're going to explore this topic about whether you as a small business should consider trade shows, and if so, how do you leverage them to their max? How do you stand out? How do you generate buzz? How do you turn leads into sales in these vibrant business hubs? So if you're a small business owner considering investing in trade shows, this is the episode for you. So as I prefaced, I wanted to open this up in a roundtable just to ask the question, are trade shows still relevant? And are you guys seeing them kind of growing again? And I'll start with Ken because he's in the top left for my screen anyways.
I don't know if they're growing again. I mean, they are. Of course they're growing again because there were none. So yeah, there's growth. Are they
One
going
is more
back
than
to
zero.
Yeah. Are they going back to what they were before COVID? I honestly don't know the answer to that. What I do know is that about 30 to 40% of the people that I either work with directly or follow are very excited about getting back into the trade show world. The remainder of people really aren't commenting one way or the other, so it's hard for me to say. For a lot of reasons, I can't participate in any trade shows right now and in the foreseeable future. But I do think that for 30 to 40% of the people, I think the hardcore extroverts, they're dying to get back to do live events, and trade shows are obviously a part of that.
Yeah. Great points. What about you, Jeff?
Yeah, I think well, let me say this. Let me say it's a qualified yes. I think they're back, but they have morphed a little bit. There's different kinds of trade shows, of course. There's the big, huge industry trade shows in the electronics world, things like Comdex or Consumer Electronics Show. There's the smaller ones, the smaller local ones, local home and garden shows or boat shows or car shows are a good example. And then there's also some industry niche specific ones. So I think, are they back? Yes. I think businesses participate in them? It's a qualified yes. I think you've got to find the right ones. Some of those bigger shows they almost have a mass production show for a show's sake feel, and not really a show to benefit, businesses and attendees. In other words, it's all about the production and the sale of sponsorships or booths or tickets to attend. I think you got to be a little careful and qualify the right shows.
Yeah, great points. Paul?
Nope, they're not. Good show. Talk next week. Yeah, I think it depends on the people more than the industry. I think, like Ken talked about, the extroverts. I have no desire to go to a trade show, no matter what it is. But then there are some people. So I guess like Jeff said, it's a qualified yes, because they've gotten more and more reluctant to give out information. So being at a trade show might lend some credibility, but that's not a given necessarily. But if you have a longer sales cycle, I think it might benefit you more. But yeah, I think you would just have to try it. And if you get results, great. And if you don't, then don't spend the time and money,
Yeah, I'll also add that, like anything in marketing, you've got to get in your ideal clients' heads and know if it's something that they value, that they participate in. If you're looking for, CEOs then you go to a conference or a trade show where CEOs are likely to attend. If the CEOs aren't attending, but they're your ideal clients, why would you go to that trade show? Right. So I think you need to, like anything, just because we may not like them or think of them as being great doesn't mean they aren't for your ideal clients. So you got to get back into that perspective of, will your ideal clients, the people that you want to do business with, be at trade shows? And if so, it's another, we talked about omni-channel last time, right? And then trade shows are just one of the channels that you can go to reach your ideal clients.
Great point, Jeff. And I think you
Yeah.
got right to the heart of it, right? It's the same question we as marketing consultants ask our clients when they're talking about social media channels, is if your clients and prospective clients aren't there, why would you burn time, energy, and money to go? But if your clients and prospects are there, then it's worthy of exploring the ROI of it and seeing what you can do to leverage it, for sure. Ken, did you have another point you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, I think, just like a lot of things, over the last 3 to 4 years, people have, when things went away and they started looking at, oh my God, it costs that much to do this. People started to get some sticker shock. And, unfortunately, most businesses, and we're going to talk about this, a lot more in this show, they have a very poor strategy of how to get the most out of a trade show. So whether it's the right channel or not, let's set that aside for just a minute until we get to it. I think a lot of people are looking at, oh my God, I had to spend X amount to just get there. Then I had to pay for the hotel. Then I had to pay for the cost of being at the facility, all of the meals and all that kind of stuff. And, when they looked at that price tag and then they looked at what they were getting out of it, rightly or wrongly, I think a lot of people have probably backed off of doing trade shows. And I know I'm not saying that that's the right decision, because I think if you have the right game plan in place, which is what we're going to talk about for the rest of the show, they can be very lucrative. So don't just prejudge something based on looking at it purely as an expense and what you got out of it last time, because chances are you probably weren't doing all of the things that you could do to get real juice and uplift out of these trade shows.
Mhm.
Great points. Great points. Yeah, lazy trade show attendance is not the right place to be lazy, right? I've certainly seen a lot more of our clients getting involved in trade shows again in the last year and a half, and especially as we got into 2024. And that's actually why I thought this would be a really great topic, because I think they are growing in interest with people. So let's jump into some questions here. So I'm going to ask Jeff, I'm going to ask you the first question, but how can small businesses prepare effectively for trade shows? Ken talked about the importance of that. You talked about, how to make sure you're going to the right show, but what's the best way for small businesses to prepare?
Yeah, I think, I'll expand on this a little bit, but I think in a nutshell, it's do your research and have a plan. I mentioned a minute ago, you got to tap into your ideal client's mindset and see what they value and where they're going. So that's the first thing. Start by researching where your ideal clients are going to get their information. Are they going to trade shows? What trade shows are they going to? When? Different times a year. Different businesses, different niches will have things. And the right after New Year tends to be, at least here in Austin, tends to be a big time for home and garden shows, probably because it's not hot outside and people are, thinking ahead to the spring, but they're more interested in going inside and doing something than when the weather's not as nice. But I think by, do the research, ask your ideal client audience, some of your customers, would they go to a trade show? What trade show do they go to? What do they look for when they get to the trade show? And then start building the list of trade shows. Yeah, I've done all size trade shows. I've worked for a large, corporate entity that did a major trade show every year. I mean, we're talking the kind of trade show where they would staff it with 100 people. And I've been in small business owner where I've gone with one other person and staffed a trade show. And then I've had clients that have done different types of, I'll put conferences in the same category, industry specific conferences, a little bit different flavor, but a lot of conferences will have an opportunity for vendors to connect with their audiences. So you've got to do the research and you've got to build that list of what are the likely candidates for trade shows. And then you can ask them. Most of them will have a website. They'll have a prospectus that you can request. It may even be downloadable. You may have to request it. And of course, that means a salesperson is going to call you back. But those prospectuses, or prospecti, I guess, they will give you a lot of information about the show. How many attendees, what job roles, all different aspects of that. They'll also give you a lot of information, not just about how to exhibit, but some of the other opportunities I know we're going to talk about later for sponsorships or advertising or whatever. Because of course they want to, sell you as much as they can. But build that list of trade shows, get all the prospectuses, start comparing them, start looking to see are, the people I want to reach really going to be there. I said earlier, if you're trying to reach CEOs, if you're going to a conference that's all, HR directors, that's probably not the right audience. Flip it around. If your right audience is HR directors, look for an HR director oriented conference or trade show. So figure out where you want to go, figure out your budget for being at them. Don't forget travel, but then start planning what you want your appearance at that event to look like. What are you going to give away? What are you going to talk about? Some conferences will have the opportunity to get speaking engagements. Now they vary from 10 minutes on a side stage that may be a few $100 or $1,000 up to, main floor, main podium, featured speaker type things. And those can be very, very expensive if you don't have a big name where you get invited. Side note, speaking opportunities may have a earlier registration than the actual conference. So again, think ahead. And on that note, lead times, don't plan, next month I'm looking for a trade show. Think 6, 9, 12 months ahead. Think about what you're going to, like I said, look like when you're there. What's your booth going to look like? How's it going to lay out? What are you going to feature? What are you going to do to bring people in to talk to them? I know we're going to talk about that in a few minutes too. Think about how you're going to train your team, how you want to position your business, and then have clear objectives, right? What do you want to get out of it, right? You're going to spend a bunch of money. You're going to go to a show. You're going to, spend time and money on it. And you want to do that for some goal. And it's going to vary business to business. A high-end software, company that has a annual recurring revenue from one sale of $25,000, may only need one sale from a conference or a trade show. A home improvement company that has an average selling price or average job of $1,000 may need 10 or 20 sales from directly attributable to the trade show. So think about your objectives. Think about how you can take advantage of everything that you have to offer, including later follow up, and then kind of map it all out. Come up with a good solid plan. It's not done on a whim. There's a lot to it, and if done well, it can be very effective.
I like how you brought it back to objectives, Jeff. And when you think about the number of leads that you need to get in order to get the number of sales you need to get, and then work back from that and include that in your ROI calculations, that can be a very powerful and also pretty simple way to figure out, is this achievable for us? Do we think we can actually get that number of leads, that number of sales? And then anything above that is gravy, right? But yeah, you have to start with your objectives.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the things also, with some industries, especially professional industries like dentists, doctors, even accountants, CPAs, that kind of stuff, a lot of those industries, they have to keep up with continuing education credits. And usually there's a lot of online stuff you can do now. But I think a lot of the professionals in those industries, they look at the trade show as, first of all, an opportunity to reconnect with people. So they like to go to those. But then also the continuing education, it's just an easy thing. Like I've known dentists who have gone on cruises because the association actually runs a trip, and then they do some continuing education, for an hour here and an hour there during the cruise. They get their credits. They get to write off a portion of the trip, and they get to connect with other peers and talk, about the business. And so, that's something to keep in mind as well, that that hunger that some people have felt has just been reignited, and they're eager to get back into these situations.
In that continuing education vein, another thing that is fairly new in the, I guess, probably more conferences side than pure trade shows. But since COVID, the notion of hybrid conferences has come up. So there's definitely, I'm seeing one of my clients particularly has participated in a number of hybrid conferences, and they go with a physical presence. There is the option just to attend virtually, but some of the attendees are virtual. So they're doing the classes, they're doing the continuing education, they're listening to the talks. They're not there for the party. They're not the extreme extroverts. They're not there for, walking around the floor and picking up tchotchkes from all the vendor tables. So they may attend virtually. And the exhibitors also can have virtual booths. So they have the opportunity to upload videos, to upload downloadable collateral, to have live messaging contact back and forth with the people that are on the app, not at the show, that are in between sessions. So that's something else to look into. If that is an option, if you're more, like I said, conference oriented professional businesses, that may be something to look at and factor into your planning. Can you do that only, or if both, can you stop both? Right? You want to have somebody dedicated to being available online as well as on the floor.
Yeah. Yeah, you talked about early registration too, and I think it's important for businesses that may not have done trade shows before and are considering it now, that some of these exhibit halls, usually as an exhibitor, you get, it's not always true, but often it is, especially if you're a larger vendor, you get the first right of refusal for your old space last year. Like, they give you the first option to take it again. And so what happens is, if there's a lot of appetite for that trade show, the other spots get picked up really quick. And some people find they're either relegated to a corner or, behind a post, or not at all. So I think that's important to consider too, is, if you're going to go down this path, make sure you don't, tarry, get working on it.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, certainly, the path to the food court is a higher traffic path than the back corner.
Yeah, unless the washrooms are there, then maybe that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, I want to add, don't forget about part of the value of the trade show is that you're there with other potential strategic partners.
Great point.
Don't forget about that.
Yeah.
A lot of people just go there, they hang up their shingle at the booth, and they don't talk to the other vendors or other partners that are there. And yet building a strategic partner network can be maybe the most lucrative thing that could happen out of that trade show, potentially, in some cases.
Yeah.
So I think I'm going to jump in with one thought related to that. I think the vendor-to-vendor networking, and certainly the trade show organizers will often create vendor-to-vendor networking opportunities. That's good and powerful. However, if you are going to the trade show but not planning on participating, you just want to walk around and try and sell something to all the vendors there, I would really caution against that. That's known as suitcasing. Frankly, I consider it rude. If I'm at a trade show, I'm paid to be at the trade show to connect with my target audience. I don't want people who don't have any skin in the game at the trade show to just walk up to me and monopolize my time. And in fact, if the trade show organizers catch wind of it, they will probably politely escort you out of the trade show. So if you have in mind maybe going down to the trade show as a non-registered vendor to try and catch people walking around the halls, it's really, frankly, not very ethical, and I would advise against it.
The only thing I would add to that, Jeff, because I agree, the only thing I would add is that, oftentimes if it's a huge outlay of money and you're not sure whether it's the right show, you should actually send someone from your team, whether it's you or someone
check it out,
to the trade show this year. Take a look, explore. Are people engaged with vendors? And then I would say, if you're networking with people, of course you can talk to them about your business. Like, that's totally fair. But yeah, no, I think there are some kind of gray hat, black hat kind of things that aren't very good for businesses to do. It can give you a bad reputation for sure.
Yeah.
Ken, next question's for you, and I think this segue is really nice. But what are some key elements of creating an engaging trade show booth? So you've decided to go to a trade show. What should you be doing to make that valuable?
Yeah, well, I think obviously visual impact is an important consideration. So, you want to have a design that looks professional, that represents your business, your brand, your personality in the way that you want it to be seen by people, because this may be the first, and probably is the first time, that maybe many of these folks have come across your business. So, that can include having, impressive visual displays, the actual booth displays themselves. You can incorporate visual elements, so you can bring in a large monitor. If you're a software company, maybe you play a demo in the background, or if you're, a home remodeler, maybe you have videos playing of before and after projects, or works in progress behind the scenes, things like that. Uh, but I think having an interactive element is important. You want people to stand at your booth and spend time there. Um, One of the things that drives me nuts as a vendor is that there are a lot of people, inevitably at the trade shows, there are people who literally just walk by. All they do is just grab the tchotchke and go. And so I'm not a huge fan of just having free things that are stuck out on the table for people to walk by and grab and go. I mean, having some snacks or stuff like that, if it's acceptable within the rules of, the trade show, hey, that's cool. But, it just, having the pens or pads of paper that people could just walk by and grab and go. I'm not a big fan of that. I want people, I want to design the booth to get people to stop and spend time. Years and years and years ago, and this is really common now, but um, at a software conference that I went to back when I was selling to the federal government, we actually had a putting green. At the time, that was unheard of. Nobody ever had done that before, of any of the people that I talked about. This is back pre-2000. And we had people standing in line waiting to hit the putt because they had an opportunity to win something um, at the end. And so, you had a couple of people working the line, just keep people moving through. But then you had somebody who actually could stand there and have a conversation with somebody to learn about why they were there, what was important to them, what problems were they having, was there any opportunity and alignment for us to potentially work with them to help them solve that problem while they were waiting in line. And guess what? Because they had nothing else to do, they would give you the time of the day. And a lot of trade shows that I've been to, people are in such a hurry that they just fly by. And even if they do have a need, they're just going to keep. Their goal is to go hit as many of the booths as possible. If you don't give them a reason to stick around and have them be a captive audience, and look, this is classic landing page strategy, right? I mean, think of your booth as the physical manifestation of a really good designed landing page where people land on it, they spend time on it, and they take the action that you want them to take. Jeff talked about the objectives. What do you want people to do while they're there? Make it clear and obvious. Do you want to book follow-up consultations? Okay. Don't just ask for that. Have people on an iPad book time on your calendar right then and there. They're automatically put into your CRM so you can follow up and nurture with them. Just don't have them write it down on a piece of paper. Do it electronically. Send auto reminders. Now it's on their calendar. It's on your calendar. It's going to be much more likely to happen. We've got no-show follow-up sequences if they fail to show up after the fact to try to get them to rebook. There's just a whole series of things. What drives me nuts is most people don't tie a trade show to digital properties, driving them to a landing page on a website where they can download a white paper or a case study or something like that. That's super easy to do. You've got QR codes. You've got NFC cards. As a matter of fact, we've got an NFC business card where people can literally tap their phone on your card, hit a button, and the contact information is automatically saved. It's got a great looking digital business card. that they can take a look at. You can have some additional calls to action, like download our resource guides to help you solve, the top 10 most challenging marketing problems, or whatever it might be in our case. Um, if you ask people to write stuff down at a trade show, that's your enemy, because people are not going to be very likely to do it. And if they do write, maybe you're not going to be able to read their writing, you know? And so now you've got an email address that you captured, but you can't do anything with because it's illegible. So don't make those mistakes. Automate and digitize as much of this as possible. Make it as simple as possible. If you can take advantage of QR codes or NFC technology, which is basically like if you've ever done a tap to pay, or you've ever gotten a hotel room with a key card where you literally just put that key card on the lock and it unlocks. That's the NFC technology. You can do the same thing to get digital transfer of information, like contact information, sending them to a page to write a review for your business, driving them to a landing page that's got all of the essentials that you want to convey to them after the trade show. It just drives me nuts that people don't take advantage of that. Don't make sure. And look, I get it, because some of these trade shows, they're 8 hours long. But don't sit down at the booth. I mean, if anything, get a what's it called? I'm drawing a blank. Not just a chair, but like
A stool,
a stool. Yeah,
a wobble chair.
Yeah, get a stool so that at least you're more upright. You look like you're upright as people are approaching, and then you can pop up a lot more quickly than some of us who are getting older trying to get out of a chair. Unless you want that to be part of your act of your trade show, then you can do that. But
And don't eat at your trade show booth.
Yeah,
I've seen
exactly.
it all the time. Guys mowing
Yeah.
down on a burger, and you're like, how unprofessional is that?
Yeah. I like standing in the hall a little bit. Don't be obnoxious. Don't get in people's way, but stand there, be ready to greet them. Look like you want them to stop by. Have a smile on your face. Again, there are a lot of people who they literally sit behind a table at a booth, and it's like they're checking their phone, they're reading their emails, they're doing God knows what. They don't look like they really want to talk to anybody. You don't want to send those signals. It's hard enough to get people to stop and give you time at a lot of these trade shows anyway.
Yeah.
So don't let that happen. I think, again, just to reiterate, have a super easy way to share contact information. QR codes, NFC cards are two huge things that I recommend. Capture the lead information. Get an appointment if that's appropriate for you. If, it could be to sign up to watch a demo. It could be to schedule a free consultation. It could be to get a free estimate. But make sure that you're getting that action while people are at your booth. Don't wait for them to say, oh yeah, I'll schedule an appointment and walk away. Make it as easy as possible so that they're very likely to do that while they're there. And then marketing automation is your biggest friend at a trade show, because it's the thing that's going to allow you to stay top of mind, follow up with them, nurture them, keep providing information to guide them through their buyer's journey well beyond the trade show. And I think that that's just absolutely critical. And most people, it drives me nuts. They just don't do that, and that's not part of the plan.
Yeah.
Ken, I want to jump in on, the whole topic. A bunch of the things you hit on about how to have an engaging trade show booth. I think that was the question. First and foremost, be engaging, right? It's not just the booth. Sure, the booth has a lot to do with it. And I'm a big fan, by the way, of good graphics and some motion. So some kind of video. And good graphics doesn't have to mean one of those fancy, erector set looking pop-up walls. It can be as simple as some banners. I know we're going to talk about, ways to do trade shows on a budget in a minute, but have good looking graphics, have some motion, which probably means a display, a laptop. One of my clients they don't want to ship a TV around to be able to have their slideshow, their little demo reel running on. So they go buy, every time they go to a conference, they go buy, a $180 TV. They use it for the conference and they raffle it off. So now you've got some people coming over for entering the raffle. Now, giveaways you got to be careful with, because you have to think about what behavior you want to incentivize in people, right? You don't want people coming to your booth and signing up for a free estimate, for instance, just because they're going to be entered into a drawing for $100. You're going to get a lot of no-shows. You're going to get a lot of people that you try and confirm and you can't even get them on the phone. But having, some motion, and then if it means raffle off the TV and that helps draw traffic, that's an added bonus. And then, the whole be engaging part, that goes back to the people, the staff working the booth too. I'm with you, Ken. It drives me crazy when I walk around trade shows and you see, 2 people at the booth sitting behind the table on their phones, eyes down. And it's like, it's not even generational. I don't want to, put a generational thing on. I've seen, 50, 60-year-olds doing that at their booth. It's like, the message that conveys is, why am I here? And if that's the message it conveys, then my response is, why should I talk to you? When I mentioned that I'd done some very large trade shows, this is years ago, back when I was in the high tech business, they actually put us through a week-long boot camp of how to do trade shows. It was really cool. And picked up a lot of tips. And then, one of them is don't sit down. If you need a stool or something to lean against, if you need to take a break, if you're working shifts with people, go take a break and sit down, but not at the booth. Put the chairs out of the way, get rid of them even. You want to be energetic. You want to be standing there, engaged with people. And the whole, out in the aisle, making eye contact as people walk by and saying hi, being friendly, smiling. I don't like asking how it's going, because everyone's just fine. For sure, if you're a HVAC company, don't ask, you need a new HVAC unit? You don't want to be doing that. But you want to do something to catch their attention and be engaging. I'll give a little tip of something we did, and it kind of ties into give behinds. One of the things I learned in the show boot camp that I went to was have something in your hands, right? Psychologically, people that have, even if it's just a 3x5 car, if they're holding something in their hands, they seem more authoritative than just standing out there, whatever. So we made up some 3x5 cards that fit in a recipe box. And one side of it was actually a recipe. We had 3 different ones. One side of it was a recipe, and the other side was information about the company. And we'd walk by and, we'd ask people, do you like salmon? People kind of look at you a little strange. You look at the booth. Now they're looking at and they kind of keep walking. Do you like chicken? Or if they said no, we say, how do you like chicken? And then by the third one, they would stop and come back and go, well, yeah, why are you asking? I go, well, I've got a recipe card for you. This is a really good, and it was a house painting company. So we had tied in the name of the recipes, like, painted salmon, shellac chicken, whatever. And we said, well, we've got a recipe card for you. This is really good. I've made it myself. It's awesome. And, put it in your recipe box. And the next time you need house painting, go look in your recipe box, because that's where everyone looks for house painters, right? And they kind of laughed, but they remembered that, and it drew them in and engaged them. And now we had a conversation going. So there's a lot of things you can do to be engaging, and, a lot of ways to be memorable. And a leave behind is valid, but yeah, don't do pens or stress balls. We joked, this high-tech company I was with, one of our competitors was giving away stress balls, and we kind of told people, yeah, you're going to need to go get one of their stress balls if you use their product, because it's going to create a lot of stress.
Yeah.
But, be memorable, have something that when they leave the show, they remember talking to you about the recipe. They remember talking to you about your product, of course, is what you want. They have something that they put in their desk that's a reminder. And then, as you said, really the best outcome is you want to sign them up for something at the show, whether it's a follow-up email or a free estimate, or we're going to send you a white paper or whatever it is. Yeah. Connect with them.
Yeah. To the extent that you can, I mean, the giveaway should be something that really represents your business and is a differentiator.
Yeah.
Not just the generic thing that everybody else does. And that requires, like you said, Jeff, planning, doing things in advance, because you might have to do some research to find those things, get them sourced, and then they have to be produced and delivered.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not just going to happen in a matter of, a week or, a couple of days.
Right.
You got to think about all that stuff in advance.
And if it can be done quickly, it's going to be expensive. So when we get into budgeting, again, the planning ahead and thinking of sourcing things is going to become important.
Absolutely. I'm going to do a little round table question again, and this one's about what strategies. Like Ken, you alluded to this, but let's dig into this as a round table. What strategies can small businesses use to follow up with leads post trade show? And I'm going to start with Paul on this one.
So did you skip a question?
Nope.
Okay.
This is a round table, Paul. So this would have been asked of Apoorv, but he's not here today. So I'm round tabling this one. So this is more like what are some strategies to do post-show lead follow-up?
Yeah, there's some overlap. We kind of touched on a lot of this, but like Ken said about the CRM, spreadsheets and post-it notes aren't going to cut it. Okay, you have to have a way to follow up with people, and whether it's emails or calls. And I'll say this right now. I was going to answer it in the next question, but you've got to have a really good offer. It's like businesses don't want to have an offer anymore, and you have to give people a reason. We have a client that they do trade shows, but it's really more of a brand awareness because people have gotten more and more reluctant to give out their information. And I blame that on the email spammers and the abusive email marketing, because people don't want to give out their information. And then, they're getting 5 emails a week from you, and that happens. And so you have to really give people a reason to give you their information. But like Ken said, try to schedule meetings, but you can also get a lot of no-shows, which that can happen no matter what your strategy is or how you're doing it. But following up quickly, and this goes back to the automation CRM that Ken was talking about. If you just, and we have a couple clients that do trade shows, and one of them, they had never used a CRM before, and their strategy was to just hand things off to their salespeople, and they take a week and a half to get back to these people, and by that time they've probably moved on. So I think that's one of the biggest things.
Great points. What about you, Jeff?
Yeah, I think look at the technology that you can leverage, but also have a personal touch. So I think it's a combination. It depends on the type of the show too. If you're at a more professional oriented show, again, I kind of maybe call it more of a conference than a trade show. You might be able to get the attendee list. That's one of the things you want to look at when you're evaluating the shows that you want to go to. If you can get the attendee list, then you can do email follow-up. For sure, you want to be gathering as much information as you can at the booth. Like Ken said, you can have a QR code or an NFC card, and then people can go to a link and give you their information. And you can drip on them. You can enter them into email sequences. If you're having something, say, look, we're making this available only to home show attendees. We don't have it here, but we're going to send it to you, right? That's a way to get mailing addresses or email addresses if it's a digital product to be able to deliver. So it gives them a reason to give you the information. But then also phone calls, right? Especially the people that are engaged in have come to the booth. If it's their business card or if it's someplace you can just make a note, a specific follow up with a person and make a note about what you talked about, so that when you call them back on the phone or send them a one-off email, it can be personalized, and that will help facilitate the connection. Some like home shows, you're not going to be able to get the attendee list from the organizer, but they may have an app where people that come visit you, you can scan their badge or their entrance card.
Makes it super easy.
Yeah. It makes it easy, but you're relying on them, and they probably are charging a little more for it. So you got to look at that. Again, weigh it as you're figuring out the trade show and the trade show logistics of how you're going to move everything around, how you're going to do everything, it may be in your best interest just to have, I don't care about scanning their ticket. I'm just going to, ask them for the information directly, or use one of the methods Ken mentioned. But yeah, follow up. Don't ignore phone calls, email for sure, and make it as personalized as you can.
Perfect. Jeff? Or sorry, you're Jeff. I'm having trouble today. Ken.
Yeah, I think really just the critical thing is you got to have a plan for post trade show. And that includes allocating time to do the proper follow-up, and the more personalized it is, the better. But at the same time, you can ease a lot of that burden by designing in advance your follow-up and your nurture. And then have the ability to supplement that with things based on real conversations that you had. And so looking at, if you can categorize somebody's interest based on where they're at in the buyer's journey, or based on the product or specific set of services that maybe they were interested in, when you follow up with them, you're going to give them, the most relevant, valuable information, and it's not going to come across as just being spam. The thing I don't like about using the trade show provided lists is, hey, look, everybody who attends that trade show is not your ideal customer. So, obviously it may be a good way to find those few people that didn't swing by your booth, who maybe were legitimately interested, but that's kind of the equivalent of cold calling. In my mind. You want to get well qualified, really interested people from your booth, and that's what should be in my opinion, your top objective. Get their contact information, get the information that you need to stay relevant for them as you're continuing on beyond the trade show. And again, keeping that in a system, CRM ideally, I think, is going to be your best friend if you know how to use that system properly.
Yeah.
You can still do a ton of personalization.
Yeah. I think simple personalization is really important too. We've talked about kind of taking notes about your conversation. I would even say, like, make it easy for your salespeople or yourself, if it's just you at the trade show, to create, like, here's the key services that we promote at this trade show, so that I can follow up specifically to the service or the product that those people were most interested in. And I find, like, having a segmentation or tagging method is much simpler than trying to then weed through all your notes later. I think the notes are important because that gives it more context and allows you to comment in a more natural way with people when you're following up with them. But I think you got to have that segmented list to make it easy. And the one thing to remember too, I would not say no to a list like doing cold outreach, because it's kind of lukewarm outreach to attendees of trade shows from the attendee list. But what I would say is just remember, like, every single vendor has access to that list probably. And if there's hundreds or thousands of vendors, imagine the mailbox overload that people are going to be getting shortly after that event. So
yeah, two things on that point. Yeah. And Ken, I didn't mean to imply to rely on that list. It's just another resource. But yeah, you typically will have to filter it. The ones that I've seen have included, every registered attendee, every job title, and even speakers and other vendors. So you definitely need to filter it down to at least the businesses or job titles that look interesting to you. You don't want to be sending your competitors all of your follow-up information either, giving them ideas.
That's a great point, Jeff.
The more you can get locally at the booth, the better.
Yeah. And Paul, you broached this topic a little bit, but how can small businesses measure the success of their trade show participation? Can you dig into that a little bit more?
Yeah, we've kind of touched on all of this. But first of all, what are your objectives for this trade show? And then how many leads did you get? And that can be kind of difficult because, like you said, there's people that they'll talk to you and they might even give you some information, but they're not really interested. So is that really a lead, or is that just somebody wasting your time? But you have to analyze that conversion of leads to sales, which comes down to your return on investment. What do you need to get out of this trade show to make it worthwhile? Keep in mind that the more expensive the product or service you're selling, the longer your sales cycle is, the more you're going to have something in place. Like we keep going back to CRM, some way to track this. Because if you have a 6 or 8 month sales cycle, you're going to have some kind of nurture sequence using a CRM for that. But if you're selling a $30,000 product, you only have to sell one, to get a return on investment. And I think Jeff touched on this. If what you're selling is $500 or $700, then you're going to have to sell more of those to get that return on investment. So keep that in mind when you're planning the whole from start to finish, to nurture kind of sequence. And I'd mentioned that a lot of times, and even Ken touched on this at the beginning, is that a lot of it might just be about brand exposure. This might be the very first time that people ever heard of your business. So they may take information from you, but they may not be willing to give you their information because they've never heard of you before. They want to go do some research and, talk to other vendors and attendees. And if you're the owner and you don't attend the trade show yourself, talk to the people that you sent to the trade show. Get their feedback. So
you hit on the brand exposure, and yeah, I want to jump in on that a little bit. That also factors almost into some of the investigation of which shows to go to. Is how much are they going to help you? How much are they going to mention you in social media or in their promotions? And that probably depends on the level that you come in at. Most trade shows will have different levels of exhibitor. But also, you can use the fact that you're going to be at the trade show. I've got a client that's going to do a small, almost neighborhood-based home show coming up in February. Well, I guess that's this month now, right? And they're putting out a press release. We're putting out a press release on that. I wrote it yesterday. It should go out today, and it's announcing the fact that they'll be at the home show. So we don't expect that the local TV station is going to fall all over themselves and rush out there to cover them, but they're going to get an online press release, which means a lot of backlinks from big websites to their website just from doing that. So that's newsworthy. That's part of the prep and part of the exposure, brand exposure, and social media mentions that they'll take advantage of for sure.
Yeah, I would just want to add into this conversation that, like, when you're thinking about ROI, so the return on your trade show investment, you really need to focus on what is the value of a new client, how long is the sales cycle, because one of the comments, and I know you didn't mean it this way, Paul, you weren't talking about, if somebody is using up your time, like, that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? You're creating relationships. At a lot of trade shows, it's about the feeling you give the person that's going to present your business in a positive manner. And I've seen it especially in my corporate days, where we would have to coach our sales team that no one who comes to your booth is a bad opportunity, right? Even in some industries where there would be a lot of students who were currently studying to be in that profession, they loved coming by the trade show booths to get the giveaways, right? And quite frankly, our sales teams sometimes dismissed those people. They were dismissive to those students. But those students are going to be buyers in a year or 2 years or 3 years. And this is a long play. You gotta not just, you got to consider your sales cycle, because your ROI might be much higher than you're giving it credit for sometimes at a trade show. If you're just looking for sales at the show, that might not be the right metric for your business. Great
One thing
comments,
that I'd
guys.
like to add too,
Yeah.
you know, if you've been around before and you've been to the trade shows in the past, or if you've just been in business for a while and you're at some of these trade shows, inevitably you're going to come across, you know, a past customer.
Yeah.
So, you know, if you can use the trade show as an opportunity to get live video testimonials, that's a fantastic thing to do as well. So don't forget about those kinds of opportunities. As Jeff talked about, you know, if you're fortunate enough to get a speaking engagement at the trade show, even if it's a 10-minute side stage kind of a thing, again, get people to talk about that. You know, write up a statement, go on camera and do a video of it or whatnot, because that's great during and post marketing material that you can leverage. You know, and so you have a plan and be ready to take advantage of those. So always go to a trade show with, you know, your video equipment and be video ready. And in most cases, you know, you're going to have something. You're going to have your phone. But in other cases, if you want a little bit better production value, you know, be prepared to take a lighting kit with you. You know, and capture those opportunities, especially if you're going to have a speaking opportunity. You know, even if it's just you know, 30-second video clip of you up on the main stage or whatnot. You know, that's huge.
Yeah.
That's a good point, Ken.
I'm going to skip a couple of questions, the round table questions, guys, because I think we've answered most of those. And I'm just going to jump down and you guys can pull any of your comments from those questions that you wanted to insert. The last question I wanted to ask everybody, because I think this is kind of an open forum for you to just say, like, hey, here's some tips or tricks that I came across that I found to be highly effective for businesses at trade shows. So let's round table this puppy. Anybody can jump in as they want, or I can pick.
Well, you know, the only thing I'd say is, you know, going back to where we talk about return on investment, you know, there's a lot of intangibles when preparing for a trade show, you know, and it's not just the monetary layout. There's a lot of time and effort and planning that has to go into this. And it's one of the reasons I'm not a huge fan of trade shows. Sorry about that. Turn that
I thought you were going to be making a big announcement.
That's right.
I was, but you know, there's a lot of things that go into, a lot of planning and time that go into these things. So make sure that you're keeping that in mind.
And if I can just add to that, like, just because like you, Jeff, I used to do corporate marketing and trade show management and that kind of stuff. And some of the biggest issues are logistical issues that if you plan properly, everything runs smoothly. But make sure you have your shipping figured out ahead of time for your booth. If you're crossing a border, make sure you have the brokerage, customs brokerage stuff filled out properly and way ahead of time. Have some storage space set up for your booth and your tchotchkes and everything, because that's really important. We've had it where back in the day, we did some cross-border events. A trade show booth didn't show up. Luckily, we had sent our sales team with some pop-up banners. They gathered some chairs from around the hotel. They gathered some plants. They created a little sitting space for clients. But stuff like that, like, you just have a contingency, because you never know. Stuff happens, you know, things go missing. But planning. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to advocate don't pack everything into one box, either split shipments.
Good point. Yeah.
or plan on, if you can, plan on taking some as a carry on. Put it in the car, carry it on the plane if you're flying. Yeah, I had a client. Everything was in one box, and they shipped it early. It should have gotten there in plenty of time, and it showed up a week later after the show. So yeah, they were,
Horrible.
needing that box of things that we could get there right away.
That's when you uncover how good your sales team is, right?
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah,
I
how
did want to
adaptable.
hit a little bit on some of the cost-effective ways to participate
Sure.
in shows, and I think I mentioned it earlier. You don't need a big fancy pop-up booth. You just mentioned, in a pinch, um, a nice piece of carpet. You need some kind of flooring, so you go to a carpet store, get a carpet remnant cheap, throw it on the floor, get some tables from wherever you get them from, little cafe tables and chairs if you want to sit and talk to people, but usually you'll get a table from the show in a pinch. Just the table with some easels. Even go get some nice poster board graphics printed up and put them on easels on the table level. Now they're up at people's eye level. If you want to spend a little bit more money, I think they're in the $100-$150 range. You get the floor standing pull up banners, about 3 feet wide, and I think they come up 5 or 6 feet. Now you put one of those on a table, and you've got something that's a little more interesting, a little more visual. Now, if you build 3 of those, and you have the flexibility, especially if you design the graphics right, of mix and match, move them around, only use one, use two if it's a smaller space, use three if it's a full space. We've done that for a client. But they're a lot more cost effective than one of those big full floor pop-ups. Looking at some of the smaller local shows, you don't have to travel across the country for a show. You don't have to do the biggest show in your industry. Start smaller, start local. Test the waters, dial it in, figure out how it's going to work for you, and then go from there. There's a lot of ways to get going and use this tactic without going all in on a huge budget.
Great points. What about you,
Yeah.
Ken?
So I do think that geofencing or geotargeting and
Yeah.
remarketing have opportunities.
Oh yeah.
Huge.
There's a lot of nuances
Can you
that you
can
have
you
to deal
describe
with.
what that is, Ken?
Well, so I mean, for one thing, you can draw a digital boundary around a location, and anybody who goes into that location, you can capture their typically something like their phone advertising ID.
Yeah.
You'll never know who that person is individually, but you'll have that phone ID, and the advertising system will allow you to deliver ads to people who were within that boundary that you set up digitally and anybody who goes in and out of that is going to be captured. So that has a lot of potential, and can be great for follow up if you have the opportunity to, uh, you know, if you know the likely audiences of people, when they attend a particular show, are going to go to specific websites. It gives you an opportunity to use that website. If they visit that other website, not even yours, but another website, you can potentially put them into a remarketing or display audience, I should say. So don't forget about those things. The other thing I want to talk about is, and you want to always be respectful of the show and follow the rules, but if it makes sense, schedule a sidebar where you've got a room reserved at a nearby restaurant
Absolutely.
where
Yeah.
you can take
Mhm.
people, take a group of people together and have a mini little presentation. You could do it at your potentially at at one of your hotels. You want to be respectful. You don't want to skirt. Uh, I mean, it is kind of skirting the rules of the maybe the particular show, but for a lot of smaller businesses, you can't afford the prices that they're going to charge for some of these big sponsorships, like sponsor, happy hour at the conclusion of day two. That could be ridiculously expensive. Um, and instead, I think you want to build a little bit more of a private audience. And so if you can, get those people and say, hey, you know what, if you're interested, drop by. We're going to have a room over at, this hotel or this restaurant. We're going to be talking a little bit more detail about this product, service, solution, whatever it might be. use the trade show to do that. And then the last thing is just absolutely make sure that you marry the offline to the online. And trade shows measure, track, and improve the close rate of and deliver the better result for your trade show.
Yeah, great points. You stole some of my thunder because I wanted to make sure we covered, feel free to have offsite client events, right? And open it up to a client bringing a friend, right? Bring another, if it's a dental conference, bring another dentist that you're buddies with, like bring them along. And because usually the client events, first of all, it could just be wine and cheese. It could be a beer bus to another event. It could be whatever, but it's an opportunity to, first of all, for prospective clients to see the value that you've brought to other clients. And then it's just creating your tribe, right? You have people that value you in a room together, and you're going to build those relationships. So yeah, always be respectful of the rules, but there's always ways, to be creative around those rules. I've seen the beer bus idea work really effectively sometimes. So it's not.
The great thing is you've already got the people who are already likely to be your ideal customers already located in a single place.
Yep.
Don't squander that opportunity.
Yep. Yeah.
If you can build
to make that, I was just going to say, to make that work, again, preparation, because usually you want to have people set aside that special event ahead of time, right? You want them to schedule
That's
it.
what I was
So
gonna
it
say.
takes a little bit of planning.
Yeah, build your target list and think about that extra. How do you go over the top for the people you really, really want to reach, and take them to a steakhouse, take them to a golf course and play around, whatever. Yep.
Absolutely. Well, guys, I kind of feel like there's so much we could keep talking about, but we've done a really good job of covering, I think, what will help small businesses. We've brought a lot of experience to the table. So hopefully our listeners, our viewers have gotten a lot out of this. But just go out there and explore this idea, because it could, for some businesses, this is a really powerful way for them to continue to build their business. So I'm going to wrap up. Thank you to each of our marketing guides for exploring this topic today and for sharing your insights. Thank you to our audience for joining us today. I hope you found this topic valuable. Please share it with other people. We want to get the word out there that this is a great podcast. And obviously, if you as a listener or viewer have a topic you'd like us to cover, let us know. We would be more than glad to explore that idea. But until next week, folks, keep calm and market on.
Yeah.